Thousands of golfers are using the wrong driver for their game, and in this video I'm going to share with you 3 reasons why this could be, and if you identify with them, maybe it's the wrong driver for you. Let's check them out. So as a PGA professional, I've given thousands of golf lessons, and the amount of times people have turned up to me for a lesson with actually the wrong components in their golf bag, being the driver today that we're talking about, is astonishing. And what I want you to think about is that if your driver isn't right for you, you could be costing yourself shots out on the golf course. You might have a brilliant golf swing that is working technically well, but actually the club that is at the end of it meeting the golf ball isn't quite right for that swing. So I'm going to go through these 3 factors now, and hopefully if you identify with these, maybe it's time to think about actually looking at the driver that is in your bag. And number 3, by the way, this is the most common one that I've seen, so make sure you stick around for that one. Reason number 1 is all to do with the driver head, and in particular the sort of shape of head. Under this driver, before I pull it off, I would imagine a lot of people, if I asked you to comment now, what model is this? Is it a Max? Is it an LS? Or is it a standard? Would probably fall into the category of a standard or an LS because I am a better player. But actually, it's a Max driver. Now, this isn't my driver that I'm using. I'm actually using a Mizuno driver at the moment, and even that one is the draw biased model, which is aimed a little bit more at maybe higher handicappers. And I think that's one problem where we've sort of fallen into the potholes of this as time has gone by. We've seen lots of different models come out, whether it's a Titleist, whether it's a Callaway, TaylorMade, Wilson, whoever they are, and we're sort of being pigeonholed into terms of high handicapper, low handicapper and mid handicapper when it comes to driver models. And it works in some extent because, you know, we are a broad spectrum and we need something that could help us maybe pick the right driver. But I'm going to hit this one and then I'm going to tell you why it could be the wrong driver in terms of head shape that is in your bag. Second hole at Formby Ladies, couldn't have picked a harder hole to hit a driver on as well. But let's give it a go. Now I've got the Max, it should become pretty easy. Oh, that is a tiny little fade down towards that bunker. Oh, that is so good. That is bombed. A Max driver. And it is down there. Not always as simple as picking the category that you should technically be in. Go get a fitting. So, why could you have the wrong driver head shape for you? Well, when we look at it, like I say, we've got pigeonholes for each category now, and I would maybe fall into this better player one because I'm a PGA pro, I've got a higher club swing speed, and I generally strike it a little bit more centered. But when we look at it, we would have that as one category. We'd then have the mid handicapper category that would be a standard model, and then maybe a higher handicapper which would maybe fall into the Max one. But it's all relative to our golf swings. I personally don't spin the golf ball a lot, so thus far I'm struggling to keep a low spin one under control because I can get it launched in the air with the right loft on the club head, but then because of a lack of backspin, I actually get it dropping out of the sky, so maybe I don't get the right distance. Maybe if I'm not quite striking it, I'm starting to see it really moving from side to side a lot more, so it's not a club for me. Now, the Max one, I generally am still going to get it out of the middle. I launch it no problem, maybe a little bit higher, but what I'm seeing is I'm getting the right backspin, so I'm not then getting too much side spin, and I'm able to actually keep it a little bit more under control. I'm just going to clip this one. Ooh, a little carvy. The amount of times I would have a person come into my bay who maybe had gone for the LS model or the standard model because that's what they've seen the better players use, so if the better player's using it, it should be right for us, was actually quite outstanding, and almost the mention of using the higher handicappers one was almost frowned upon. But in fact, it's what they needed. It's because it was going to help them actually get the most out of that club head. And like even for me, like I say here, I've got the Mizuno one, which is actually helping me get that spin right after having the fitting, and it's actually helping me generate the most out of my driver. If I just went for, I'm a better player, I'll fall into that pigeonhole, all of a sudden, I'm not going to be able to get the most out of my driver. So on this part, what I want you to do, just have a quick think now. Were you fitted for your driver, or have you just bought it based on your handicap? You should have that one, because if you don't know your characteristics, it could be the wrong driver for you. So have a check, have a little think. Let's have a look at reason number 2. Guys, if you've got the right driver, I want you to hit that subscribe button for me down below. If you haven't as well, hit the subscribe button as well, and you might find out other parts of your game that you could be fixing by just making better decisions. Second reason the driver in your bag could be wrong for you could be the actual setup of your club. In my hands now, I've got two paradigms. I've got a standard and I've got an X, but they differ drastically in loft and in flex. In the standard one, I've actually got this set at 8 degrees and I've got an extra stiff flexed shaft in here. In the X version, I've actually got it set at 11 degrees and I've got a regular shaft in here. And the reason I want to do this is just to highlight the difference in launch and spin and distance numbers from each driver. So I'm going to hit 3 shots now, just so we can actually get an understanding how actually changing a head shape can alter it, but then loft and flex, because if we're not getting fittings, if you're just buying clubs off the rack and you say, oh yeah, I'm a 10 stiff, I think that's, you know, that's what like mid-handicappers use, isn't it? You could be doing yourself a disservice, because we might see that you need a stiff, you might need a regular. We've actually got a good video coming out with a blind shaft test with 5 different amateurs on this as well, which was staggering, some of the results. But I'm going to hit this one first, the 11 degree regular shaft, to see how the numbers look, and then we're going to put it up against this to see how much that will affect me as a golfer. I actually think that this 11 degree regular is going to be better than the 8 in an X Flex. Let's give it a go. Gosh, that feels light and that is towed in. Absolutely bullet straight. A little bit down the left of the fairway. It's playable all day long. Pretty much identical, a tiny draw. You could throw a blanket on those 3, they're that close together. Very similar numbers, right? So on average, I'm getting roughly around about 2,500 revs of spin, carrying it about 260 yards. Big thing there, yes, I've lost distance about 30 yards of carry, but they were all pretty much down the fairway, just down the left-hand side, very tight together. Let's see now how going to a stiffer shaft, an extra stiff one with less loft, affects those numbers, because like I say, you could have something in your bag that your mates maybe given you, or you bought just on the back of thinking, well, that's the best one, that could drastically alter, and it's only 3 degrees and a little bit of stiffness, how it performs out on the golf course. Let's give it a go. 8 degrees with an X Flex shaft in, which again you would say would probably be more of my spec, but I'm expecting this to be a little bit more unruly. Dead straight, but I tell you what, it's hardly even got off the ground, that. Ooh. Not a bad one, pretty straight. It's nearly on the green, but my God, I'm not getting it anywhere up in the air. So flat, that flight. Like Lou Donald then. 2-yard fade onto the green. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful things. So very interesting results there. Now the shots weren't too dissimilar. The big thing that I would say is that the actual launch with the 8 degree driver, I really struggled to actually get the ball up in the air. It was pretty straight, but didn't have any major difference in terms of a carry number to actually what we saw from the 11 degree driver. That actually got up in the air easier. It spun a lot more. It was 2,300 revs, as where the 8 degree driver was 1,800. So all of a sudden we're seeing a massive drop off in spin, 500 revs, which obviously if you're not quite getting the middle, we're then going to start to see a lot of side spin coming in and a lot of deviation on the ball. And if we think of different talents, you know, levels of talents, if you're not quite middling it every time and you've got a driver that's ill-suited to you, maybe loft and shaft, then we're going to start to see a lot of balls carving and missing fairways. So we'll pop the numbers up on screen here. And I was surprised by the actual carry distance being very similar, but for me that spin rate is drastically different, which is a huge thing that we've got to take into consideration. Now what I want you to do after you finish watching this video, maybe just think about Googling a local club fitter. Just find out how much a price for a fitting is, because I bet there's a lot of people that have never had the club fit. And even if we throw the Twitter poll up here, which I asked the question of, have you had your recent driver fit for you? I think it was close to nearly 70% of people said that they didn't have their driver fitting. And if you've just gone and bought one, we can see some differences there. Not massive, but we are seeing a regular to an X-Flex and 11 to 8 degrees. We're seeing big differences there, which is obviously going to affect your ability when you're out on the golf course. So have a little think. Were you last fit for your driver, or have you just bought it because you thought that one was the one that you should be using because you could be losing shots because of that? Let's get into the third and final reason that is probably the biggest one I see people making a mistake with when buying a driver. So the most common reason I think people have got the wrong driver is the one that I saw all the time when I was teaching, and that was buying new technology, thinking that the old technology was the problem. Now, it is nice to have nice new shiny golf clubs in our bag, but what I'm going to show here in a moment is that there's probably not much difference between the old and the new. If you're going from year to year, you might see minuscule improvements in terms of distance, speed off the face and spin. Maybe if you're changing from 10 years to current, you might see a bit more of an improvement between either one. But a lot of the time it could actually be your golf swing. We need to put a little bit more work maybe in our golf swings to actually improve our drivers. That thing there is £525. You could get a heck of a lot of lessons if you were going to spend £525. So we're going to put them head to head. We're going to use the Epic Speed that I have here and the Paradigm to see what the difference is. I'm going to hit 3 balls with each, Paradigm being first, and see how much of a difference there actually is between these two drivers. Great hole this one, the 18th at Formby Ladies. It's just one of my favourite driving holes, but let's see how much of a difference there really is between old and new. Helps if I aim. I've absolutely smoked that, but straight into the rubbish, it seems. Straight into the rubbish. 2 down the right hand side, identical spots, both in the rough though, so a new driver doesn't mean you're hitting the fairway all the time. Oh, that is more like it. That was Remy Mullerstein. So we've changed now to the Epic Speed, which I think was 2 to 3 generations ago from the Paradigm. A couple of years, a bit less technology. We're not seeing the full carbon body, i.e. from the roof to the sole without any joining plates in it. So a little less technology in there, but will that stack up into 5-10 yards difference? What are we going to see here? Or will it be very, very close to it? Let's give it 3 shots and see how the numbers stack up. I would take that drive every single day down here, over the bunkers, bouncing up towards the green. The main difference there actually was the sound of it. It sounded a bit more tingy. Well, it's got a better fairway ratio, 2 out of 2. So interesting little differences there. The ball speed between the two, the actual Epic Speed came out faster. It was 3 miles an hour faster, 159 miles an hour versus 156 with the Paradigm. What we're seeing though in distance, it is a little bit different. 280 carry for the Paradigm, pretty toey with those strikes, and also very similar with the Epic Speed, 276. So 4 yards difference. What I would say is that I actually hit the Speed. I hit 3 fairways out of 3 with that one as well. With the Paradigm, a little bit off with my aim to start with. 2 identical shots in the rough, 1 down the fairway, very much close to where the Speeds is. So I wouldn't say there was a massive difference, but that's where I see a lot of players come in and all of a sudden they've said, I bought this new driver because my other one wasn't working. This one is a something model, it's helping me get better drives. Now, if we just have a look at, let's say, where I taught at Trafford Golf Centre, the price of lessons, maybe a 3-pack of lessons is around about £100. If you've got an okay driver and then you go and spend £100, you've saved yourself maybe £400 on a brand new driver, but you're also hopefully getting some advice on your golf swing and why that driver isn't working and what you need to do to correct it. But also, you know why it isn't working. So if on the course for some reason your bad shot is a hook, you have an answer as to why that's happening and what you need to do, go and do and correct it. As where you might have a honeymoon period with this new driver, it works for the first few weeks, but all of a sudden that hook creeps back in, and then you're left thinking, well, I've spent 500 quid on this and it's doing the same thing. So I would say on this one, which is, like I say, the most common, maybe think of investing in some lessons. It might be one lesson, it might be 10 lessons, but if you can get an idea of how your swing performs and why your driver is doing what it's doing, at least you know then you're working towards bettering it and how you should better it. So 3 reasons there why I think you might have the wrong driver in your bag. If you're playing the wrong model of head because you're just thinking this one fits the category that you may fall into. Secondly, have you had the right shaft and loft fitted for you? And thirdly, are you just buying a new one because you think technology is the answer? Have a think of which one you're falling into. It could help you pick the right driver for your game, but like I always say, lessons and custom fitting are probably better than just going buying willy-nilly and hoping that they work. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. Why not check out the video that we talked about wedges as well and why you could be using the wrong ones of those. See you in another video very soon.